I met my limit, so that's it.
You sure you want to be here?
Yes, I do.
Are you absolutely sure?
I'm positive.
Whatever you have to do, just find an excuse to win. Keep going.
It pays to be a winner.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Cold War Radio. I'm in my bunker. This is the source for streaming political and government talk anywhere. I'm Hutch Bailey Jr. deep down in my bunker in a Smith & Wesson studio in the city of Pittsburgh and transmitting somewhere between the Norwegian Sea and Sweden, 1,500 miles east of Iceland. Come in, Radio Norway.
Good evening, Hutch, and good evening to our lovely audience. It's a glorious Monday, but we're going to dig into some dark material, so maybe we'll bring the spirit down a notch or two before we finish with this show.
And please follow me on Spreaker, ladies and gentlemen. Like the Facebook page, facebook.com/Cold War Radio 22. You can catch the show on Roku, Blueberry, YouTube, iHeartRadio, the 405media.com, the Cold War Radio app, which is free in your app store regardless if you have an iPhone or Android. The email is hutch@steelcityresistance.com, and the Cold War Radio patron hotline, 412-567-1460. The chat room is up on Spreaker. Place to be, ladies and gentlemen. Go to steelcityresistance.com because you're going to need that to check these copious show notes that we have compiled for you this evening. And please become a Cold War Radio patron in the right-hand column. If you want to send mail, it's Hutch Bailey Jr., P.O. Box 96022, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania 15226. I want to thank all the patrons, and I just want to give you an advance warning. The Thursday night show was a train wreck, and I apologize for that. That was technical in nature, and I have another property that I'm going back and forth from, and it's gonna take its toll over the next couple weeks, I believe, on shows. It's just the way it is. I have to do some things up there, and it's the weather is extreme, not as extreme as Norway, but for Pennsylvania, it's in between Pennsylvania and New York, real close to a Seneca Nation reservation, and it's in the mountains, the Allegheny Mountains, and so conditions are a little rough. I will get it squared away, and I want to thank all the patrons for sticking with me. We've only lost like 2 patrons since I started taking patrons, and that's saying a lot.
Wow.
You know, these people you people stay with me, and I stay with us, and I appreciate that to no end.
Absolutely, and it's I would also say a big thank you to the patrons. You make it possible to keep this show on the road and also invest in new equipment that we need to keep pace with the technical evolutions.
That's absolutely right. Now, I had the show used to be a round table, so I had some spare microphones, but I had to get another mixer for the Northern Studio, and I had to get another computer. Now, I had got that previously when we were doing the failed phone system that we had for a while when Skype went down. But that's all from the patrons and the people that sponsor the show. If you want to sponsor just one show or make a one-time donation, paypal.me/Hutch Bailey Jr. Hutch is normal. Bailey is Baile. A funny way of spelling Bailey. Baile. PayPal.me/Hutch Bailey Jr. That's about all I had on that end. I wanted to. We're going to talk about the FBI this evening, but normally at the top of the show we mix it up a little bit, and I want to do that. There was a question asked of Dinesh D'Souza at a forum. He was at a forum about his recent book, and he was asked a question: are the Democrats still racist? And I came across this Norway, and I just felt that it was perfect for the show. It was something that he answered it very well in some ways that I would have never even thought of. So let's listen to Dinesh D'Souza on Are the Democrats Still Racist?
The question, the deeper part of the question is, so prove to me that the Democratic Party is racist now. And as often happens with a tough question, this is kind of when I rise to the occasion. Well, let me just say this. If one goes today to the Democratic-controlled inner city, and we're talking here about some 24 cities entirely dominated by the Democratic Party, there's not a Republican in sight. I argue that we will see in them now all the 5 features of the slave plantation that Kenneth Stamp outlined in his classic work, The Peculiar Institution. In a description of the plantation, Kenneth Stamp identifies 5 things that you would see on a slave plantation. Number 1, broken down, dilapidated, and unsafe housing. Number 2, broken families. You can see this under slavery. There was a confusion of who's the real father, mulattoes running around in the plantation, the family structure in decay. Number 3, a high degree of violence required to hold the place together. Police power, whippings, overseers, fences, barbed wire. Number 4, everybody gets a basic provision. If you need food, you have health care, they call the doctor. But nobody gets ahead. There's no opportunity. Nobody really advances. The Southerners and the Democrats used to call slavery a school of civilization. And Stamp goes, that's not a school from which anyone ever seemed to graduate. And finally, nihilism and despair. A feeling that there's no future, that this is an intergenerational, ongoing, lasting way of life. Now, all those 5 features can be traced directly to inner city Oakland, inner city Baltimore, many places, Chicago. And like I say, this has been going on since the 60s. The United States has spent trillions of dollars to fix these places. The Democrats have been in charge of fixing it. And yet, many of these places are no better off than they were in 1967. Think about that. So, at the very least, this reflects a callous and shocking disdain for the welfare of the people who live in those communities. And for me, this is a big opportunity for Trump. If Trump is able to talk straight to people in our inner cities, and I would add in our barrios and on our native reservations, and show them that there's a way to get up and get off the plantation, this would be a mammoth opportunity for the Republican Party.
So, Norway, I can't really think of anyone who said it any better than that.
Absolutely. And I mean, if you run into that guy at CPAC, please give him my regards and please try to get an interview with him, because what he sums up in this little short soundbite is really the entire book of his, the latest book, which is called The Big Lie. And it is at the heart of so many extra votes for Trump in the 2020 election. And it's also at the heart of making America great again.
Absolutely.
Because when you trace this back to the Republicans freeing the slaves, the Civil War, 1860, and all the way up until today, the Democrats have been at the center of keeping minorities down in the mud.
Yes, they have.
The inner cities here are really nothing but plantations. They are still slaves to the Democrats, just in another shape and form.
That's true. And let's go to the other end of that spectrum, and some of these ridiculous celebrities. I want you to listen to a conversation between Michael Axelrod, who was the first, I think his name's David Axelrod.
David Axelrod, yeah.
Was the first communications director for the Obama administration, pretty much helped run his campaign. This is the guy who provided the women that accused Herman Cain of malfeasance. They lived right in his building where he lives in Chicago. So that was always just a coincidence. But I want you to listen to him talking to Whoopi Goldberg, one of the Democrats' most genius spokeswomen. Let's listen.
We still have so much to do right now. I mean, we still have 16 women who are accusing the man in charge.
You're talking about the president?
Yeah.
You never say his name.
I don't.
Why?
I can't.
Really? It's only one syllable.
I know.
Do you think that it somehow honors him to use his name?
In conjunction with that word, yeah.
You mean president?
Uh-huh.
I see.
Yeah.
But you recognize that he is the president.
He's there. Listen, this is the first time where I can't wrap my mind around this, and that people felt the need to put this in. So, yeah, I know people don't like that I don't do it. I'm fine with that. There's lots of stuff I do people don't like. I can live with it. But I do, you asked me earlier about Al Franken, and so I think to myself, well, Al Franken is gone. A lot of people have lost their kids. This one is still sitting there. So for me, all these women's groups need to be raising money for these women's defense fund so that they can go on and do what they need to do. Because there seems to be no ethics committee for him.
I mean, there's no moral comparison. These people have got derangement syndrome. I mean, everything that's been brought up, the porn star reneged on everything. All the other women have vanished into thin air. Now, if you had a case against someone who was the president of the United States, would you just go into thin air, or would you try to get rich? I mean,
if there really were cases here that could be brought to court, the pro bono Democrat lawyers, they would line up to get a case like that, and they would do it pro bono.
Absolutely.
They wouldn't charge anything for it.
You're
because
right.
they could get rich on this.
That's a fact, and it's
But,
just it's delusional.
Yeah, absolutely. But the fact of the matter is that I see this very simple when I put on my outsider's Norwegian glasses and look into America and see Whoopi Goldberg. I see her in a very clear, simple light. Imagine that Trump actually succeeds with making America great again, and his entire Trump train now rumbles for 8 years, and success after success. The entire career of Whoopi Goldberg would vanish. I mean, she has used her entire career to play these downtrodden black people that are against racism and standing up for the ideals. But who is that really? That is Trump. And she realizes that when the genie is out of the bottle, she would lose her entire career on this.
Ladies and gentlemen, your weekly Jihad report for 27 January to 2 February. 25 jihad attacks, 202 killed, 361 injured, 5 suicide blasts, all occurring in 15 separate countries. The religion of peace, atrocity of the week. Pakistan, Shiite family of 8 exterminated. Other recent misunderstandings of Islam. On the 5th in Israel, a 29-year-old father of 4 stabbed to death by an Arab terrorist. On the 3rd in Pakistan, a suicide bomber targets off-duty local soldiers playing volleyball, killing 3. On the 2nd in Afghanistan, 2 women and a child are disassembled by Taliban bombers. On the 2nd in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Muslim radicals attack a health center, shooting 2 guards and hacking dead another. On the 1st, in India, a Hindu man's throat is slit for being in a relationship with a Muslim woman. On the 1st, in Nigeria, a suicide bomber infiltrates a refugee camp and takes down 4 innocents. The religion of peace. Ladies and gentlemen, one body at a time.
Allahu Akbar, Allah.
All right, that goes on every week, ladies and gentlemen. It never ends since I started doing this show in 2010, and it started way before then.
I noticed something in this list here today. A Hindu man's throat is slit for being in a relationship with a Muslim woman. And that is actually quite important in when we're talking about Islam, because Islam defends its right to spread through population growth, and this is a very clear example. You cannot, as a kafir man, a non-Muslim man, you cannot touch their women.
Unless you're Anthony Weiner, then you get an exception.
Exactly. Well,
then you get 2 for 1. You get 2 for 1. Plus he's a Jew. All right, so we're going to talk about the FBI, ladies and gentlemen, tonight. And I guess the question that we have for you is, did you ever trust them? And do you trust them now? Because actually, I did used to trust them at somewhat. I mean, I'm not completely naive, but I don't trust every single person. But the institution seemed to be pretty straight up. But we're going to get into it. And I want to just break down some of the directors of the FBI. Right now, Christopher Wray, from August 2017 until now, is the director. He was sworn in as the director on August 2nd. Andrew McCabe was before him. He served from May 9th to August 2nd. James Comey served from 2013 to 2017 and was only one of 2 FBI directors ever fired. Robert Mueller served from 2013 to 2001 to 2013. He served an extra long term. And then there were some you never heard of. Thomas Pickard, 2001, was acting. Louis Freeh, we heard of him from the Clinton administration, 93 to 2001. Floyd Clark was acting before him for a couple months in 93. William Sessions, the other FBI director to be fired by President Bill Clinton, November 87 to July 93. John Otto was an acting director. William Webster, you probably heard of him, from 1978 to 87. And then acting before him was James Adams. James Blackburn Adams, appointed acting director February 15th, 1978, serving about 12 days. Clarence Kelly, 73 to 78. And then it goes back, Patrick Gray. J. Edgar Hoover, May 10th, 1924 to May 2nd, 1972. Herbert Hoover was a scary individual.
Absolutely. I mean, that is really, during that period, FBI and especially his position became a state within a state, and presidents, they simply they didn't dare to fire him because he probably had more dirt on them than St. Peter, I suppose.
Absolutely. And I want to flip down. I'm going to go back to the structure because I think it's very important when we're talking about cutting the corrupt head off. I think we should understand the head. I'm trying to find the exact verbiage here. But here it is right here. I'm going to surprise the audience, I think. I might even surprise you, Norway. I doubt it, though. But we talk about the Republican Party and why it was formed. It was formed to forward abolition, to get rid of slavery. That was the sole issue that created the party. It branched off into other things other than that. But that was the reason why there were meetings here in Pittsburgh and in other places in Wisconsin that formed this party, because the Whig Party was much like the establishment Republicans today. The Whig Party talked a good game, but they never would do anything about slavery. And so a new party was formed. But the roots of the FBI as an organization stretch back to the Reconstruction period, when the Secret Service moved temporarily over from the Treasury Department to the Justice Department in 1871 in order to combat the Ku Klux Klan. The director of this fleeting FBI precursor, Hiram Whitley, did a fine job in South Carolina alone in 1872, where there were 1,207 arrests, 96 prosecutions, and convictions of 86 Klansmen who went to prison. And that's a pretty good number for 1872, let me tell you.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I didn't know that. I did not know that the FBI, I thought it was strictly formed to combat gangsters. That was what I was always told. That's what all American kids were told in my era. And I'd never had a clue about that. But that's something that, so much like the Republican Party, the FBI started out with a noble mission.
Absolutely, and This was the precursor to what later became FBI, and of course the formation of FBI was closely related to organized crime and the Prohibition era with illegal liquor sale and stuff like that. But this was the precursor, and it was the foundational idea of what became FBI later on.
Now let's go over. I want to just show you the bureaucracy of this thing is ridiculous. I mean, Christopher Wray, we're going to get into him, the current director, in an audio clip in a minute, but he apparently is a deep state guy for sure. But listen to all the departments. This thing is so complex. The senior staff, the deputy director acting, is, because we just fired one, is David Bowditch. Associate deputy director, David Bowditch. Chief of staff, senior counselor, Jim Rybicki. You might have heard his name. Deputy chief of staff, Dawn Burton. And then you have the office of the director, deputy director, associate deputy director, and the facilities and logistics services division, headed up by Richard Haley. You have the finance division, also Richard Haley. Inspection division, Nancy McNamara. Office of the chief information officer, Gordon Bitko. Office of Congressional Affairs. What's he do? Gregory Brower. Chief of EEO Affairs, Arlene Gaylord. Office of the General Counsel, James Baker. He was removed. Office of Integrity and Compliance. Now, there's a guy who should get fired. Office of Integrity and Compliance, Patrick W. Kelly. Have we heard that name?
Yeah, well, I heard that name mentioned several times, but I can't put my finger on it right now. But the name is absolutely familiar.
Office of the Ombudsman, Monique Bookstein. Office of Partner Engagement, Carrie Sleeper. Office of Private Sector, Douglas Korneski. Office of Professional Responsibility, there's another one that should be on the hot seat, Candace M. Will. Office of Public Affairs, Records Management Division, Resource Planning Office, Executive Assistant Directors, and Assistant Directors. Now you can see why the budget is so big. I mean, do we really need all the National Security Branch, Executive Assistant Director, Counterintelligence Division, Counterterrorism Division, High Value Detainee Interrogation Group, Terrorist Screening Center, Weapons of Mass Destruction Directorate, and then you have the Criminal Cyber Response and Services Branch, Executive Assistant Director, Criminal Investigative Division, Critical Incident Response Group, Cyber Division, International Operations Division, Office for Victim Assistance. Let's not forget the Intelligence Branch, because we have a whole intelligence agency, but we need an intelligence branch at the FBI, Executive Assistant Director, Directorate of Intelligence. The Science and Technology Branch, Executive Assistant Director. You see where I'm going with this?
Absolutely, and it. I mean, you have you skipped the counterintelligence division with
I skipped
Bill
5 divisions.
Priestap, which is really central to all the mischiefs and law breaking that's been going on. But this is an absolutely enormous bureaucracy, and you have 50,000 employees. And when I see this list, it absolutely boggles my mind, because I'm thinking, how many people are there in a supervisory capacity compared to the good guys that are actually out in the field trying to keep America safe?
And there was 50 names on that list. I didn't read them all, but every one of those titles had a name associated with it, which means a senior executive service supervisor that Norway's talking about. And they also have deputies and everything else. I mean, this is deep state at its deepest. These people are entrenched. They have 30, 40-year careers. You know, they don't go anywhere. They move around within the agency. But let's, what I want to do now, I want to go Norway, 412-567-1460. 60 if you'd like to call the show. But I want to go to the Conservative Treehouse and an article by Sundance, Tip of the Iceberg, the pending intelligence memo is the beginning, not the end. And I think we as conservatives understand that this wasn't, at least I understood it. It was a synopsis of probably thousands of documents that the Intelligence Committee reviewed.
But I read somewhere, I think it was Gateway Pundit, where there are actually 3 more memos.
Yeah, I read that too.
In the process, through the same process as the first memo. And I must say, like I said here on an earlier show, I was waiting for what was coming out. I didn't want to get my hopes up, but when I saw the memo, it was actually better than what I anticipated, and I believe this was just a test. I think the 3 other memos coming out now are going to be even more mind-blowing than the first one.
I think they're going to go closer to Hillary Clinton, too.
Yes, absolutely.
That's what I
absolutely.
heard.
Hillary Clinton, NSA, CIA. I think they're... I don't think they're afraid anymore to take on the big ones. And it's about high time when you see everything that's been coming out about this 17 different intelligence agencies and their abuse. I mean, only in this FBI case, you have blatant abuse of the Fourth Amendment. And it's the DOJ and the FBI seems like they think they are outside the reach of the law. They become a state within the state. And that is a huge threat against the American Republic.
Especially conservatives, but everybody, you're right. The whole shooting match is at risk. I mean, and it's not just this case. I mean, there's so many other ones, like with Lois Lerner, when she unlawfully sent the 21 CDs containing the Schedule B filings of over 1 million Americans to the Obama administration. The recipient was the DOJ. It was the DOJ who was chosen to utilize the political lists in their secret research project. And I mean, this is what, it lists Republicans is what it is. All the Tea Party organizations were all under scrutiny. And then
absolutely.
You have the case against the Bundy family that was recently thrown out of court because of the gross malicious conduct of the DOJ that was highlighted by the judge. I mean, this is the same DOJ who denied their own Office of Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, the right to conduct oversight on DOJ internal action. The express Justice Department intent in every action has been an attempt to remain unaccountable, and it's working. Let's listen to Jim Jordan on this issue.
Director, was Agent Peter Strzok the former deputy head of counterintelligence at the FBI?
I don't remember his exact title, but I believe that's correct.
And he's the same Peter Strzok who was a key player in the Clinton investigation, the same Peter Strzok who interviewed Cheryl Mills, Huma Abedin, participated in the Clinton Secretary Clinton's interview, and he's also the same Peter Strzok who now we know changed Director Comey's exoneration letter, changed the term gross negligence, which is a crime, to extreme carelessness. Is that the same guy?
Well, Congressman, I don't know every step that the individual you mentioned was involved in, but certainly I know that he was heavily involved in the Clinton email investigation.
Thank you. And is this the same Peter Strzok who helped, was a key player in the Russian investigation, and the same Peter Strzok who was put on Mueller's team, Special Counsel Bob Mueller's team?
I certainly know that he was working on the special counsel's investigation. Whether or not he would be characterized as a key player on that investigation, that's really not for me to say.
And the same Peter Strzok that we learned this past weekend was removed from the special counsel team because he exchanged text messages with a colleague at the FBI that displayed a pro-Clinton bias. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Talk about the same guy. Okay.
Yes.
Well, here's what I'm not getting. Peter Strzok is selected to be on Mueller's team after all this history, put on Mueller's team, and then he's removed for some pro-Clinton text messages. I mean, there are all kinds of people on Mueller's team who are pro-Clinton. There's been all kinds of stories. PolitiFact reported 96% of the top lawyers' contributions went to Clinton or Obama. But Peter Strzok, the guy who ran the Clinton investigation, interviewed Mills, Abedin, interviewed Secretary Clinton, changed gross negligence a crime to the term extreme carelessness, who ran the Russian investigation, who interviewed Mike Flynn, gets put on Mueller's team, and then he gets kicked off for a text message that's anti-Trump. If he kicked everybody off Mueller's team who was anti-Trump, I don't think there'd be anybody left. So there's got to be something more here. It can't just be some text messages that show a pro-Clinton, anti-Trump bias. There's got to be something more. And I'm trying to figure out what it is. But my hunch is it has something to do with the dossier. Director, did Peter Strzok help produce and present the application to the FISA court to secure a warrant to spy on Americans associated with the Trump campaign?
Congressman, I'm not prepared to discuss anything about a FISA process in this setting.
We're not talking about what happened in the court. We're talking about what the FBI took to the court, the application. Did Peter Strzok, was he involved in taking that to the court?
I'm not going to discuss in this setting anything to do with the FISA court applications.
Well, let's remember a couple things, Director. And I know you know this. We've all been made aware of this in the last few weeks. Let's remember a couple things about the dossier. The Democrat National Committee in the Clinton campaign, which we now know were one and the same, paid the law firm, who paid Fusion GPS, who paid Christopher Steele, who then paid Russians, to put together a report that we call a dossier full of all kinds of fake news, National Enquirer garbage. And it's been reported that this dossier was all dressed up by the FBI, taken to the FISA court, and presented as a legitimate intelligence document, that it became the basis for granting a warrant to spy on Americans. And I'm wondering if that actually took place. It sure looks like it did. And the easiest way to clear it up is for you guys to tell us what was in that application and who took it there.
Congressman, our staffs have been having extensive interaction with both intelligence committees on our interaction with the FISA court, and I think that's the appropriate setting for those questions.
Here's what I think, Director Wray. I think Peter Strzok, head of counterintelligence at the FBI, Peter Strzok, the guy who ran the Clinton investigation, did all the interviews, Peter Strzok, the guy who was running the Russian investigation at the FBI, Peter Strzok, Mr. Super Agent at the FBI, I think he's the guy who took the application to the FISA court. And if that happened, I mean, if this happened, if you had the FBI working with a campaign, the Democrats' campaign, taking opposition research, dressing it all up and turning it into an intelligence document and taking it to the FISA court so they could spy on the other campaign, if that happened, that is as wrong as it gets. And you know what? Maybe I'm wrong. You could clear it all up. You could clear it all up for all of us here, all the Congress who wants to know, and frankly, all of America who wants to know. You could clear it all up by release. We sent you a letter 2 days ago. Just release the application. Tell us what was in it. Tell us if I'm wrong. But I don't think I am. I think that's exactly what happened. And if it did, it is as wrong as it can be. And people who did that need to be held accountable.
Wow, that's pretty heavy. Pretty serious stuff right there. And I didn't know that was so old. That was quite a few days ago. But it's still pertinent.
Absolutely. But I think the answers by Director Christopher Wray here, I mean, you cannot get a better indication that he is part of the problem, not the solution.
I agree. And that's what I alluded to at the beginning of the show. I mean, this guy's deep state as much as anybody else. But one of the things I wanted to do tonight was to highlight how the FBI has been a political tool for quite some time. Back in the Clinton administration, the Clintons were in the middle of a re-election campaign. And the head of the FBI in the New York region, he was a director, James Kallstrom. You see him on Fox News all the time. You see him talking about the FBI and how all this is terrible and how it's all wrong. He was the host of an FBI series that they had on television. James Kallstrom, you've seen him. You would recognize him on television. But back in 1996, a plane got shot down in New York, out in LaGuardia. And Jack Cashel from American Thinker has done a lot of research on this. And what happened was Nelson DeMille wrote a novel called Nightfall. With a steamy encounter on a Long Island beach, the man and woman involved decide to videotape their coupling. In the process, they inadvertently capture the destruction of TWA Flight 800. The novel centers around that video. Through his many contacts with the NYPD, Joint Terrorism Task Force, DeMille learned that there was a real video out there. The best of my knowledge, the FBI confiscated the original from the MSNBC studios in the early morning hours of July 18th, 1996. And if you go through this investigation, you can see that Kallstrom changed his story in the middle. Somebody got to Kallstrom. I'm going to play a clip right now, and you're going to hear people for and against that this was the original story was that this jet was shot down by a Stinger missile. And I'm not sure who the perpetrators were, if they were Iranians or if they were linked to Al-Qaeda or linked to Osama bin Laden. But the FBI and the NTSB and the CIA and everybody else got together, and they made this ridiculous story of another reason that the plane went down. But there was eyewitnesses and everything. The FBI failed the country during this situation. And I want you to listen. The second guy that you're going to hear is James Kallstrom. And I want you to hear the way he gives himself an out in case this information ever comes to public. How he gives himself an out. Producer, play TWA 800.
Witnesses say a missile or missiles shot down Flight 800. The physical evidence supports that, but in terms of penetration, nitrate deposits found on the aircraft. When we reconstructed the interior of the airplane, which is a job that I supervised, we found that there was absolutely no correlation between the victims, the interior, and for that matter, the explosion, which suggests a high degree of separation of parts or a high ordnance explosion.
You know, we had an exhausted investigation. I had 1,000 agents assigned at the peak. And we took very seriously the idea that a missile could have shot down the plane. We used all the assets of the United States, all the missile experts in the military. We shot missiles at planes so we could study, you know, what kind of damage they did to the aluminum frames. So I'm very, very confident that we had enough of that airplane to make the judgment that no criminal intervention, to our knowledge at the time, our knowledge in 1996, wherever that science was, that did not bring down the aircraft.
What we do show in the documentary is solid proof that there was an external detonation. And that's in the form of course, everyone knows about the eyewitness statements, but we also have corroborating information from the radar data. And the radar data shows an asymmetric explosion coming out of that plane, something that didn't happen in the official theory. Let the eyewitnesses speak publicly at a government hearing, reopen the investigation and find out what really happened, and stop this facade that's been going on for too long.
Mr. Stalcup is wrong. There is no solid proof. There's no evidence whatsoever that supports his theory. We wrestled with the eyewitness issue for a long time. If someone says, and almost all the witnesses say this, I heard a sound, I looked up, and then I saw a streak of light or a firework and an explosion. Those who say they saw that saw the last 6 seconds of the event. No witness saw the first event 40 seconds prior to that.
So pretty creepy, Norway. I mean, this is something that I believed it was a stinger from the beginning. And that Jack Cashel, if you go follow him, he really breaks it down.
It's a very good article, and it I don't dare to speculate who did it, but I would say that FBI, by putting a lid on this, quenched the investigation that could have showed who did this. And 1996, we have to ask how politicized was the management of the FBI even back then.
Well, I think it was pretty political. You have to look back at Janet Reno was the Attorney General in Waco and Ruby Ridge, and
exactly.
all those things going on. But you look at Clinton was in the middle of a re-election campaign, and I don't remember if this was before or after the first World Trade Center bombing. I think that was in '94, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's right.
This couldn't come up. This was a subject that couldn't come up. It couldn't mar his campaign, and it would have. I mean, there's no question. Now,
absolutely, but a secondary effect of actually getting this out in the open would have been that you might have prevented 9/11.
Exactly, no question. These short-sighted things are dangerous. There's no doubt about it. Now, why don't you give us a weekly update on the release of these FISA documents and Judicial Watch? Because Judicial Watch is suing for the Russia collusion FISA documents. The House memo released today makes a compelling case that the FISA Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act court was misled and severely abused by top officials in the Justice Department and FBI. Rather than relying upon dueling summary memos from Republicans and Democrats, the American people should be able to see for themselves the details of how the Obama administration officials and Rod Rosenstein of the Trump administration justified spying on the Trump team.
I'm sorry, Hutch, you got to take it. Okay. I lost my document.
It's all right. To that end, we have filed a Freedom of Information. Well, let's just freestyle anyway. Judicial Watch and Fitton, I mean, these people are doing a tremendous job, and I don't know what kind of award you could give to somebody like that. It's an organization like this. But you got to wonder what we wouldn't know if it wasn't for Judicial Watch.
It's absolutely monumental what they've done over at Judicial Watch, and I would say to people, if you really love your republic, go over and donate an amount of money to them, because they're independent and they're dependent on pro bono work and on donations to get the information out there. And I mean, I don't dare thinking about where the American Republic would have been today if it wasn't for Judicial Watch. They are tireless. They're like an Abrams tank rolling through this horrible collusions done mainly by the left, but also by the right. And I mean, it's when I read the documents that come out of Judicial Watch, it's mind-boggling what they are able to do. But it's also mind-boggling how the deep state, all the intelligence agencies and the DOJ are stonewalling them.
No, you're right. No question about it. We're going to go a little early tonight. I have to make some adjustments. But I hope everybody enjoyed the program. And I'll give you final comments, Norway, before we sign out.
It's been a great show, Hutch. And this is just the first of 17 intelligence agencies that we are looking at. And I would say to people, don't leave it to the media to tell you what this is all about. Do your own research. Go to Hutch's page, go to my page, and look up these articles yourself and get informed, because what's at stake here is the future of the free American Republic.
And how can people get in touch with you?
I am at Norway for Trump on Twitter and Gab, and that's Norway4 with the number 4.
I want to thank everybody for listening live, and those of you that listen to the podcast as well. I appreciate you listening to those ads. We get a little bit from that. Not much, but a little bit. We appreciate it. I'm Hutch Bailey Jr. on Facebook, Berg's Eye View on Twitter. What's playing behind me, Norway?
That is Sønner av Norge, Sons of Norway, an extremely patriotic song.
All right, again, I'm Hutch Bailey Jr. on Facebook, Berg's Eye View on Twitter. Wayne Dupree coming up next. Thanks for letting us into your life for an hour. God bless.
God bless.